Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Friday. We're at the end of the week and going into the weekend, and got a complicated forecast going on with all the action that is happening across the eastern part of the United States in particular. We can at least look at the west and say it's nice and dry and quiet in the west, but in the east we have the potential for a major storm. We may have Tropical Storm Philippe before the night is done, and we also have some snow going on this evening and for tonight into tomorrow across the upper Great Lakes, the northwestern part of the Great Lakes, in and around Lake Superior in the UP of Michigan, and some places they're going to get 5 to 8 inches. We're back to the Brady Bunch boxes today because there's just too much happening. So I'm going to start off with the eastern satellite view, because you're going to be able to see here just exactly how potent the situation is. We've got this big swirl of clouds over the Great Lakes, and you can see the arm on the satellite of cloud cover that extends southward from the eastern lakes through the western areas of the Ohio Valley down into the western Gulf of Mexico. That is the deep trough that is now beginning to set up for the eastern part of the United States. And you'll notice there are clouds in the Gulf of Mexico, and they're starting to stream from south to north. This is the reason why the system in the Caribbean is going to make its way north and then northeastward, and eventually in a big hurry, because these are going to be strong winds in the upper layers of the atmosphere that are going to move this right along. So we're going to take a look now at the Caribbean system, if it lets me. I apparently kind of glued the satellites together. Let's see if I can fix this up. Oh, come on, folks. Here we go. We'll do it this way. This ought to do it. Nope. It don't want to. I was hoping to be able to pre-tape stuff, but we're still having some technical issues. So this is the system in the northwestern Caribbean. The Air Force reconnaissance aircraft that flew in here this afternoon found winds at flight level of 40 to 45 knots, westerly winds on the south side of a very broad, almost egg-shaped circulation. There was no evidence of a tight core, at least at this point, but you'll notice that it's been sitting in the southwestern Caribbean for the last several days, now starting to make its northward progress here, moving northward, and they have tropical storm warnings up for parts of western Cuba and also for the northwestern Bahamas. This is all part of this very complex equation that we're dealing with regards to the weather that's going to be happening for the eastern part of the United States. And this is, I haven't seen a situation quite as complex as this in quite a while. So I'm going to bring up the models here, and I'm going to make this big enough so that I can see this better. And we have enough of the new GFS that I think I can switch over to that and show you what's happening. And you know, the interesting thing through all of this, by the way, is this tropical system really complicates matters to some degree. And here's why. Okay, so here's our surface map for this evening. And you have low pressure there in the upper peninsula of Michigan. You can see the band of snow that arcs around it on the northwest side into eastern Minnesota and parts of the UP, where they're forecasting 5 to 8 inches in some places and some locally higher amounts. You've got a nice surface high off the east coast, and you've got this trailing cold front with a narrow band of showers and thunderstorms that runs from the eastern lakes down through the Ohio Valley and then the lower Mississippi Valley into the western Gulf. Now, let's move forward and show you what happens. Now, that front is going to be moving very, very slowly to the east. Look down on the southwestern part of Florida. You can see the isobars with respect to whatever tropical system comes out of here, and it could, you know, it may become a tropical storm. It won't take much to get there. So let's just assume that this becomes Tropical Storm Philippe. All the energy is going to pile on into the eastern part of the United States, and you're going to have low pressure that's going to develop. Now, regardless of whether there's a tropical system here or not, you would have had this happen anyway. The tropical system adds a little bit of meteorological forecast fun to the equation, because it's my opinion that this system is going to wind up getting absorbed by the stronger, more dominant non-tropical system that's going to be forming along the Carolina coast. Now, if that is the case, it'll probably enhance the moisture field and the rainfall up the East Coast. The models this afternoon have been having a really tough time with this, because the GFS and the Canadian model both maintain Philippe as a separate entity, okay? But the European did not, and we're going to get to the European in a second. Here, the new GFS we've been kind of going back and forth with tracks to the east and to the west, and it's been my own opinion that the upper trough was just going to be too deep here, that this should favor the westerly track that's indicated by the European. And indeed, this particular run of the GFS has gone that route. You have a very, very tight, wrapped up low east of New Jersey, south of Long Island by 8 p.m. Sunday. And that is going to be producing wind and rain. The European's track is further to the west, and the European has a different twist to this, which I'll show you in a sec. But this storm moves rapidly northward into upstate New York, right up the Hudson Valley, and that, to me, suggests that we're going to get wind and rain, and then particularly once it goes inland and north, a large portion of this area will be experiencing very strong northwest winds on the south side of that storm as it moves northward. This is going to be a very powerful, it's going to ultimately be a very powerful extratropical cyclone as it moves up into the northeastern part of the United States. Now, where the details in the forecast, the differences lie, is when we look at the European, and this is a very important difference in my opinion. I'm going to go to the tighter view here, just showing you the surface map, and unfortunately I can't show you the in-between hours, as you know. However, I actually discovered a site where I may be able to do that and use, and I'm working on that. So hopefully in the near future I'll be able to pull up some really fascinating European model maps. But here's our map for Sunday morning. You can see the low on the European, and you see how the isobar is stretched down through the Bahamas. There's probably the representation of the tropical system. However, what the European does is that it completely absorbs the tropical system into the developing low southeast of the Carolinas. And as a result, you wind up with a low that intensifies faster as it moves northward and takes a track that goes from right along the immediate northeastern North Carolina coast to just west of Cape May, to Scranton, to my favorite fishing spot up in Pulaski, New York, which is north of Syracuse. That's where I went salmon fishing. But this scenario, if it is correct, would mean that we will probably get strong winds of 30 to 40 knots with higher gusts east of the low center track. So if you're in coastal New Jersey and Long Island Sunday evening, as that low starts to go by like a rocket ship moving at a very, very fast rate of speed, there will be some strong southerly winds on the east side of that low center, and then after that it translates into strong west-northwest winds for later Sunday night into Monday morning. Every bit of, I think, 30 to 40 knots with some higher gusts would not at all be a surprise to me. With respect to the heaviest rainfall out of this, if the European's track is correct, the heaviest rains are going to fall west of the low track. So there might be an inch or two of rain, perhaps to the east of the low track, but to the west, we're going to see a bit more. I'm going to show you the GFS. I can't show you the European's view, but if you just kind of picture where the GFS has this area of 2 to 3, 4-inch rains in eastern and central Pennsylvania, all the way back almost to western PA and through much of upstate New York. that's kind of where the European has some big amounts of rain. Still has every bit of 1 to 2 inches or more as you move toward the coastal areas, and that's because as that low develops, you got that front that's pushing eastward, so you're going to wind up with some rain out of this. So I'm kind of leaning to the Europeans' idea that it's going to absorb this system rather than keep it as a separate entity, which may give this a little bit extra juice. The prime time for this will be weather conditions deteriorating during the day Sunday. The peak intensity with respect to rain will be from mid-morning Sunday to probably about midnight for my area, which is eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. And then you're going to see the rain gradually taper off. With respect to the wind, again, east of the low center, we'll have some strong southerly winds and less of a factor on the west side until the low goes by to the north, at which point you will wind up with strong gusty winds into Sunday morning. We could look at the 10-meter wind here, and if I can see it. Is that it? I hit it. Okay. And in fact, you know what? I can get a little tighter on this. But you can see the wind field. These are sustained winds and not gusts. So the yellows are all where you're going to have gales. So right along the immediate coast, and this is for Monday morning, sustained gales along the immediate coast, Long Island, up into southeastern New England. Even some 20 to 30 knot sustained winds showing up in inland areas on the backside of this low center. Again, the European has a bit of a tighter, wound up low, a little bit further, south and west of where the GFS has it. But they're all coming around to the same idea. So I think the big question going forward really is going to be with regards to whether this tropical system gets absorbed or not. It'll give some extra added juice if it does. I want to look at the upper Midwest now, so we can take a look at the snowfall. I know you guys are all chatting over there, so I will be with you shortly. But when we look at the snowfall from what's going to happen for tonight and into and Saturday, you can see the snow amounts where that band of 6+ inches showing up, a very narrow band there on the GFS model. I haven't really had a good opportunity to look at this deeply. I did look at some of the local forecasts up here, and they're basically kind of following this, so I'm guessing it makes sense. And you can see the lighter amounts as you go south. But this is the first snows for the western Great Lakes, probably coming about the time where it's supposed to happen. And I just want to check going forward. You can see there's a lot of snowfall that goes on over the next 10 days across the along and just north of the Canadian border. So starting to see increasing colder air building up in Canada, although not necessarily bleeding down to us. So those are really the two main weather features that are going on. The West is very quiet and will remain so for quite a while. I'm going to wait to talk about the long range. I think once we get this this system out of the way. I have this, for those of you who don't follow me on a regular basis, I kind of have this policy where I basically and it's mainly so that I can keep my sanity. Okay, I have this policy where I only deal with one storm at a time. So you probably saw that in action to some degree when we were dealing with the tropical storms and hurricanes this season. The same holds true for me when I deal with these winter storms. I don't like to spread myself too thin, and it does wind up after a while giving me a huge headache to start looking at 3 or 4 systems and looking at things 10 days down the road. Something's got to give, and that's what winds up giving. So let me just say hi to everybody who's on board tonight. I'm going to scroll through your posts, see if we have any questions here. And we have one from Kevin Francis. Will this wind dramatically affect my flight from JFK to Burlington on Vermont on Monday morning? Yes, that is an easy answer. It absolutely will, Kevin. So you might, I don't know if you have to rearrange, but wind is going to be a big problem up and down the Northeast down to the northern Mid-Atlantic states. Cynthia Guignautis, the worst conditions for rain and wind will occur in central PA. You will probably start to see rain get close tomorrow night as that front moves in. There'll be some rain and a couple of thunderstorms embedded in the mix as the front approaches. And then I think that rain gets enhanced during the day Sunday. So during Saturday night, from Saturday evening on, you're going to get into some rain and thunderstorms, and then you're going to get more of it during the day Sunday. I would think the worst of it will probably be Sunday during the day. As that low moves up northward. But you check back with me, and I'll keep you updated on that. Just PM me. Howard Vanderhoff, my buddy at New York NYNJ Stormwatch. You can find that on Facebook under NYNJ Stormwatch, just to let you know. Chambermaid saying hi from the Poconos. How's Zachary Grybos? How strong you think TD 18 will get? Well, it's actually not a TD. It's a potential tropical cyclone. I think it's going to become a tropical. It may become a tropical storm. It should. They already got the winds are already there. It's just that the winds are on the south side, and the center is very, very broad. There actually may be several circulation centers, which is part of the reason why the Hurricane Center did not make this a tropical storm at this point. But even if it does become one, I really am betting on that getting absorbed. Warbrick, I guess my business partner should leave South Carolina early on not Sunday. If they're you're not saying where they're driving to. I'm assuming they're driving northward up the East Coast. Yeah, Saturday's your better travel day. Probably you're going to have to deal with rain if you're driving on Sunday, so do it on Saturday. And Ellen Abraham from Alaska, where I haven't looked at the weather there lately, but I got to give it a look. Sorry. Anthony Orr, thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. You're flying, all right, but you still haven't said. I'm guessing. All right, yeah, you're probably better off flying on Saturday. Although you could probably fly out early Sunday. I don't expect any big problems, but check with your airline. I don't know what the criteria is, and the criteria is always different depending on where. Keith Brinkley wants to know how much rain New Jersey getting. Okay, New Jersey's not a small state now, so you're giving me a wide berth here. I think there'll be every bit of a couple of inches of rain, and the western part of the state may get a little bit more if the European's track is correct by taking a low up right, say from west of Cape May to Trenton to Scranton. If it takes that track, the heaviest rains will fall along and west of that low track. But one of the things is, this is going to happen very, very fast. This is going to be a very fast-moving situation. So we are going to have to figure out whether that may have impact on the rain amounts. So there's going to be some variability in this. But I'm thinking at least a couple of inches of rain I would think would be a pretty good bet. Do I see similarity with this upcoming East Coast storm and the superstorm? No, those are two totally different things. I mean, the structure in the upper air. Maybe we could show that. I'll go back to that. Why don't we show you? I'll go back to the upper air. We'll pull up the what's going on in the upper atmosphere, because that's the big player here. Is this deep trough in the eastern part of the United States? So let me get rid of me. Oh, nope. Let me try again. I haven't done the Brady Bunch windows in a while, so I'm a little bit slow on the uptake here. I'm going to open the window up a little wider so that I can see the time. Let's widen out to see if the US view works. Yeah, this should do good. And then we'll put the upper air on. And we'll go to the beginning. Okay, so look at that deep trough. You see how deep that is? You've got this closed upper low that's sitting up in the northern Great Lakes, where I just got that thing where it says, I don't know if you can see, it says 48.2, 85.92. There's a big upper low that's sitting there. Look at that long wave that goes from the northern lakes all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. So you can see, the winds are all southwest across Florida and up the East Coast. This Caribbean system gets caught in that flow. And watch how that bottom part of that trough gets very strong and then goes negatively tilted. When I say negatively tilted, the trough is oriented in a northwest southeast fashion. That is that's energy that's getting lifted up, up the East Coast. That allows storms to really strengthen. You've got this strong upper low that's sitting back up north of Minnesota, so it's basically being lifted up by that, and it rides up into northern New England. Eventually, the upper low in over Minnesota stretches out and finds its way up into eastern Canada. But that is a very, very deep trough here. And this is where the models have been having some difficulty over the last day or so with these occasional model hiccups with the structure of the trough being flatter for a couple of runs. And now it's kind of come back to this very dynamic look to it. You see something like this, if this were, in the wintertime, I'm sure we'd be all jumping up and down. Somebody would be getting hammered with some heavy snows, maybe not along the coast, but because of the track, but this would be a big snowstorm for somebody if we were deep in the winter, which we are not. But you get an idea here with the upper air, just what we're dealing with. This is a very, very powerful deep trough. So there's no question, by the way, that the pattern changed, okay? There's absolutely no doubt of that from what we had a week or so ago with that big ridge in the eastern part of the United States. Just going to get this a little bit lower here. Route 25 is South Florida, getting colder temps through the end of the month. You're going to get some cool air out of this. As this low goes by and strengthens, that cool air is going to come down pretty far down into the southeast and into Florida. So if you're looking for that, you are going to get it. Yes, Thomas Bullock, cooler weather coming into the opening of deer season. Absolutely. This cold push goes all the way down. In fact, I noticed there's a huge swath of frost and freeze warnings up tonight for a large area of the Tennessee and Ohio Valley and points down pretty far to the south. It's this cool air with the deep troughs like that. You're going to have invasions of cool air making its way down into the southern states. It's getting cooler there faster than it is here in the east. William Huber, when will I know when the model's right, or when will we know what the model's right? Watch the behavior of the satellite loops tomorrow and watch how the tropical system reacts to the deep upper trough. If you see the system not developing very much or having a real tough time developing, that might be a sign that it will be getting absorbed faster. That's the route that the Hurricane Center suggests in their forecast, by the way, that this thing will get absorbed rather quickly after becoming a tropical storm. The models are not going to be useful here because we know what the scenarios are. The Canadian, the GFS, all maintaining this storm as a separate entity. The European really does not, as we said earlier, and that's going to be important. Either way, we're going to be dealing with a strong storm system. The question is, are we going to be dealing with something that is relatively manageable with some pockets of issues with regards to wind and rain, or are we going to deal with something of greater magnitude as the European model suggests? So I think that is really what it boils down to. Then after this goes by, at least the weather calms down for the first part of next week. All right, folks, we're going to call it an evening here on this particular live stream. Tomorrow we'll live stream, and I'll try and live stream tomorrow morning and again tomorrow evening as we watch this all play out. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all goes. Hope everything is going well with all of you. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And spread the word around. I know some of you have been sharing my videos, my YouTube videos, and I really appreciate that very, very much. And thanks to all of you who have hit Super Chat along the way. Gets me a cup of coffee and a cigar, and I really enjoy that. Thank you. And we will see you tomorrow sometime during the morning hours. Oh, actually, you know what? I'll wait till the GFS is far enough out so that we can be able to look at it. So maybe right around noontime tomorrow, and then another one tomorrow evening. And by the way, as soon as we can get rid of daylight saving time and go to standard time again, the models come out an hour earlier. So we'll have most of the GFS by 11:30 in the morning and 11:30 in the evening. So it makes it makes it easier to look at, to get these live streams done, to have the whole model run finished. And the European comes out an hour earlier also when we go back to standard time, so that's going to be very helpful. I'll occasionally stay up to see the European run during the winter months because it's most of it that I might need to see will be done by 1:45, and I still can get to bed at a reasonable time. All right, folks, have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow.